3 years ago, the main storyline of Fortnite vanished right before our eyes. All of its main characters, factions, and plots had been written off, with no sign they'd ever return. Now, just around 1,000 days later, the last reality is once again floating above our island, a member of the Seven has crashed into a desert riddled with secrets, and hints to the Imagined Order's return are emerging. Today, we're finally diving deep into the return of the old storyline and trying to figure out the insane plot twist Fortnite dropped on us entering Chapter 7. Consider using my creator code TLL the Reaper in the item shop if you'd like to support me. And without further ado, let's return to the story we lost all of those years ago. Chapter 7 is kicked off with a crazy bang, but before we can explore all of those details, I need to talk about the Chapter 6 finale, 0 Hour. This live event was genuinely insane, and a beautifully done return to big lore live events that we've been asking for since Fracture. There's a lot of details missed in this event, so it's worth covering before we get into the really good stuff in Chapter 7. The plot of The Simpsons mini-season was getting the Splinter back from Homer after it crashed into his living room. After a month of crazy shenanigans with it, he ended up growing to a huge size and burping it back out onto the island. This allowed Hope and Jones to collect it and make some much needed upgrades to Jones's Rift device for a secret plan they created to get back to Reality 783 and take down the Dark Presence. They placed the Shard Splinter inside of Jones's portal device, supercharging its capabilities. In the last couple minutes before 0 Hour, Hope and Jones used the portal device to lock onto specific realities, choosing an army of heroes, villains, and creatures from across the Omniverse to bring to Reality 783 for one huge final battle. When the countdown was complete, 0 Hour began. With an established connection to all of their chosen realities, Jones broadcasted a message about how he needs everyone's help to defeat the Dark Presence and to save the island. With everything ready to go, our reality hopping back to Reality 783 initiates. But we don't actually go back to Oni no Shima. The portal device wasn't calibrated correctly, so we rifted into a random reality, over and over again, before finally making the correct jump. The light clears, and a horrifying visual meets our eyes. Oni no Shima, completely destroyed and ripped apart. Through the fog in the horizon, the Dark Presence makes his grand entrance, roaring into the sky and unleashing thousands of Onimorphs from his back. He's beckoning in a war, but Jones is ready to give it to him. Suddenly, rifts begin to crack open behind us, and heroes begin emerging. One by one, hundreds of characters from all across the Omniverse pour into the island, both big and small. Our army grows by the thousands within seconds, from characters like Godzilla and Kong to even the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, all showing up to help us defeat this reality-ending threat. And when our final reinforcements rift through, Jones charges us into battle with one line: time to take back our island. Everybody charges forward. Missiles and bullets are flying through the air, and our giant characters are running above us to fight the Dark Presence hands-on. Tons of characters are sprinting alongside us too, even older ones making appearances such as the Devourer. But our sprint on the battlefield is cut short when the Dark Presence launches Kong off of him, blocking our way forward. Thankfully though, OXR and Huntrix arrive just in time with helicopters for us to board and to take to the skies. It's a beautiful and terrifying ride through Oni no Shima, with thousands of bugs rampaging across the ground and war ensuing everywhere you look. Godzilla and Miku charge up their energy and blast the Dark Presence, and Kong climbs his way back up the tentacles to rain down his fists. Once again though, the Dark Presence is proven to be incredibly stronger than all of us combined, picking Kong back up and throwing him aside, and then turning his sights to us. In a scene that suspiciously reminds me of the Devourer of Worlds from Chapter 2, the Dark Presence cranks his arm back and swats us out of the sky, crashing us far away from the action in a secluded area. Just when we thought we had a second to take a breather, a tentacle smashes through the ground, and we're forced to face it solo. If you were around for Super Showdown, you know that we have absolutely no chance against this thing. We're taking damage, and our end is growing near. But with half of the Omniverse currently running free through the island, we should have expected somebody would come to save the day. The Bride comes riding in on her motorcycle, cutting down the tentacle and welcoming us on for a ride. We ride through the wreckage, giving us the chance to witness all sorts of characters having their own private fights across Oni no Shima. Yet again, the Dark Presence proves his strength by effortlessly demolishing the Star Destroyer, taking it out of the fight permanently. The Bride drives over a cliff, launching us into the air towards the front lines as the final surge surge ensues. This is it, our only shot. Everyone rushes forward, unleashing everything we've got on the Dark Presence in hopes it just might be enough to finally put an end to his madness. But once again, the combined force of the Omniverse is no match for this Demon King and a piece of the 0 point. Hope recognizes that our forces are dwindling, telling Jones we need to somehow hit him hard and urgently. After a moment of thought, Jones has an idea, a really dangerous one. He counts down and shoots a rift into the air, calling in one final reinforcement. The rift immediately turns into a deep red, a huge powerful beam of lightning shooting out of it. Out comes the red cube from OG. The Dark Presence appears shocked, but it doesn't stop him from instantly attacking the cube with his overwhelming power. But little does he know, this cube is the one object in the Omniverse that can withstand that kind of blow. The cube merely tilts over as it completely absorbs the power, and in retaliation from the attack, shoots it right back at the Dark Presence tenfold. As it's tearing into him, we use this chance to open fire once more, our victory growing closer. Suddenly, he glances over at Kong in his hand and gets an idea. Jones yells out for us to take cover right as the Dark Presence throws Kong into the cube, destabilizing it and sending it into the middle of the battlefield. With the red cube spinning out of control and ready to blow, this might truly be the end. Nothing can stop a cube from exploding, but maybe that's a good thing. Just in the nick of time, Mecha Team Leader soars down from the sky, piloted by an unknown figure. The giant robot sprints across the wreckage and kicks the unstable cube directly into the Dark Presence. We all watch in anticipation as the cube quickly fuses to him and the corruption spreads across the demon's body. The Dark Presence lets out a final huge roar, and then, boom. The Demon King is no more. We look around the battlefield. Everyone's standing around recovering after the fight. Hope and Jones cheer, and then their attention is turned to the now freed Zero Shard floating in the sky. It flickers and then unleashes a huge reality wave, sending all of our allies back to their homes. In this same moment, Oninoshima is restored as well, all of the Spirit Realm's corruption being cleansed for good. We float into the sky and are slowly sucked into the shard as our screen goes dark. 0 hour has concluded. But wait, what's this? A short minute-long recap of the entire 0 point storyline so far plays on our screen. The first official story recap ever created in the past 8 years of Fortnite. It ends on an extremely important note. The Seven's fate is currently unknown. But why did they decide to do this recap now? Well, we're about to find out. Now, cue Chapter 7. Hope and Jones, resuming their mission to locate and collect all of the Zero Shards, travel with us to a fresh new island. Welcome to the Golden Coast, located in Reality 266. This one is a lot different than Oninoshima. It's full of beautiful, sparkling cities, suspicious movie sets, and barren deserts. But something here is not quite right. What could it be? Oh, right. A huge Last Reality spaceship has approached the island, ominously hovering and watching us silently. Its design instantly reminds me of the Cube's cradle, the Last Reality's grandest ship. That, paired with the fact that this spaceship is themed around the Cube Queen's classic golden cube, tells us that it must come from a high rank within the Last Reality's army. As soon as it made its arrival, it blasted the battle bus out of the sky without a second thought, instantly striking fear into everyone's hearts. Our first goal on the island was to get it back up and running again by collecting bus parts and giving them to Dummy so he could rebuild our battle bus. While this happened, the mini cradle floated above Spawn Island, keeping a very close eye on us. After about 10 days, the battle bus was back in action. Thank you, bus driver. Now that our bus is back, we can take a second to breathe and explore our surroundings. What's really going on with this island? Well, that's something Hope and Jones are wondering about too. Both of them have NPCs across the map, and when speaking to them, we find out some interesting information. Jones explains to us how this place seems relaxing, but he doesn't trust it. As you can see, Jones is feeling off about this island. When we fly over to Hope, though, is where the lore gets really strange. When asking her about the 0 point shards, she explains that her and Jones are, of course, still hunting for them. But she then goes on to tell us that her visions are clouded. She doesn't dream at all anymore, and she has no idea why. So upon arrival into this island, Hope mysteriously loses her prophetic ability, Jones feels like something is off, and a Last Reality ship arrives to the island to watch us. Yeah, something's going on for sure. On this same topic, you must be wondering who exactly is piloting this spaceship. Well, wonder no more, because the character behind the wheel is actually our tier 100 outfit in the battle pass. Let me introduce you, or reintroduce you, to the Dark Voyager, Reality very redacted. If he looks familiar, he should, because the Dark Voyager is actually from Chapter 1 Season 3's Battle Pass, over 7 years ago. Now, after all of this time, he's returned with a completely new outfit and a golden cube inside of his helmet. I'm sure you have so many questions, and honestly, so do I. The reasoning for the Dark Voyager being back in a part of the last reality is still unknown, but we'll try our best to get to the bottom of it soon. It also doesn't help that most of the information we could get from him, like the reality he's from or his character's description, is redacted. The last reality really does run a tight ship. Aside from all of these roadblocks though, I've got a bit of an idea for what might be going on, but let's cover a bit more ground first. Make sure to stay until the very end of this video, because that's when I drop the huge reveal on you that makes you question all of the storylines so far. Aside from the Dark Voyager watching us and Hope and Jones experiencing a bit of uneasiness with the Golden Coast, we've got a big ol' elephant standing in the room that we need to address. What happened to the shard that we freed from the Dark Presence? Well, when making our way to the center of the island, we can see that it's actually in seemingly good hands, but for some reason, not our hands. It's located at InnoLoop Labs, the island's large tech company referred to as being the frontier of innovation. In the center of this POI, the Zero Shard is floating peacefully, surrounded by 4 Rift Beacon-like devices. This is the POI that Jones is located at. But the strangest part about this whole thing isn't what's on the surface, it's what's hiding deep below. If you descend deeper into InnoLoop Labs, you'll find yourself walking through the large tunnels of a supermassive particle accelerator, stretching underground across a good portion of the island. It's clearly powered by the Zero Shard, evident by the energy we see flowing through it. On the surface of the island, there's a random chance for special events called rift anomalies to occur. Giant surges of energy through the sky that make random things happen in-game, like speeding up your pickaxing or activating Siphon. It's very clear that this particle accelerator is causing these anomalies. There's even several maps across InnoLoop Labs showcasing the sheer size of this thing and the amount of space it covers underground. But why is it here? And how did Hope and Jones construct this thing so quickly after arriving? That's the thing, they didn't. A resident of the Golden Coast, Karina, talks to us about InnoLoop Labs and how shady it's always been, implying it's definitely been here since before we arrived. And if InnoLoop Labs has possession of our Zero Shard and neither Hope nor Jones mentions it being stolen from us, it's safe to assume an alliance was definitely formed. Based on what we can see, it could have been something like this. Hope and Jones needed a place to store the Zero Shard while we searched for more, and InnoLoop needed a power source for their particle accelerator. Then an alliance was born. So as of now, InnoLoop Labs are the good guys. But something else Karina says throws me off a little. She tells Kat Holloway, an up-and-coming actress of the Golden Coast, that InnoLoop has dark secrets and she intends to find them. When asking her about InnoLoop, she tells us that she hacked into their servers ages ago and found tons of redacted files, mentioning things that she doesn't quite understand, such as the 0 point and the importance of the number 7. Guys, this is getting to be a big deal. This next conversation is something I've been anxiously waiting to read to you, so get ready. When asking Karina about the 7, she says, InnoLoop's redacted files talked a lot about different realities and kept mentioning the 7. Yeah, it's the 7, capitalized like a proper noun, like a person, place, thing. Or, if my most secretive sources are to be believed, a group of people, heroes even. Maybe it's nothing, but I'm going to keep digging anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a mic drop level reveal. Not only are we finally getting references to the 7 in the storyline again, but this mysterious tech company has way too much information for just being a mysterious tech company. Jones was definitely correct. Something isn't right. Whoever InnoLoop Labs truly is, they've just entered a partnership and gained access to a shard of infinite power. Surely nothing can go wrong. Now that we've explored InnoLoop Labs in the current storyline with the Zero Shard, let's take a step back and explore some more of the secrets hidden on this island. Trust me, we've only scratched the surface. A good portion of the Golden Coast is made up of a vast desert, the first time since Chapter 3 that we've had one on launch. But this isn't any ordinary desert. Through the heavy sand in scorching heat, an abandoned research facility, a crashed object, and a groundbreaking audio log are waiting to be discovered. So let's not waste any time. I welcome you to Classified Canyon. Positioned in the southeast of the Golden Coast, a colossal triangle-shaped structure pokes up through the sand. On each side, a giant 07 is printed in white. The outside of this location feels very military-like, with several extra bases being scattered around the central complex. Approaching the triangle, you'll find that each entrance is locked by a big bunker door. Whatever is inside of this facility, it's being kept shut tight. Entering inside, it becomes a labyrinth of halls and rooms, complete with tons of monitors, tech, and theory boards. One of these rooms actually has a mini cube being studied on a table. This helps us confirm that this facility definitely doesn't belong to the last reality. That might seem obvious now, but the deeper we go, the more you'll see why that's important. On several sides of this first level, there's zip lines that take you deeper down into the facility. And when I say deep down, I mean deep down. When you finally reach the bottom, the room opens up into a massive chamber, along with dozens of computer screens and operating stations being distributed around. This was definitely once an important facility. Aside from this main room, there's a couple other areas you can run around and explore. Something unusual you may notice are the spilled barrels of a green liquid that turn you invisible on contact. Whoever was last here was experimenting with invisibility, almost like they wanted their operations being kept secret. But we've got much more important things to discuss. One more giant steel door stands tall in this chamber, locked tight. When pressing the red button to open it, it begins to sound alarms, warning anyone nearby to step back. Finally, it slides open, and the sight inside is shocking. A saucer from the army of the last reality sits in its own room, separated from us by a glass window. This is where many have assumed that this must confirm this location belongs to the last reality, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Rather, whoever or whatever was here had objects from the last reality that they were holding in their possession to study, deep underground where nobody would find them. With all of Classified Canyon's secrets being revealed, the only question that remains is who once owned this facility? Well, I have reason to believe that long ago, this desert complex once belonged to the Imagined Order and acted as their research facility on the last reality. Let me quickly explain. The giant 07s printed across the exterior of this structure wasn't a random choice. We've seen this number before, presented in a similar military-esque way. The Origin's high-tech prison jumpsuit from his time locked away by the Imagined Order. I firmly believe that the Origin's 07 wasn't because he's a part of the 7, but because he was locked away in the IO's 7th research facility, which we are now discovering in Reality 266. Once capturing the former Cube King, the Imagined Order placed him in their maximum security underground research facility centered around alien tech, as we see in-game, to study him alongside his previous faction's possessions. This not only explains what this facility was used for and who it belonged to, but also connects it back to the 7 during a time where it seems like everything will soon be coming full circle. The final thing I'll mention about this facility is a line from Karina. There's this facility out in the desert. It's not as abandoned as they say. Moving a bit further southeast from Classified Canyon, players can find a crashed object wedged into the sand. I'm honestly not sure how to drop this reveal, purely because of how huge it is and how long we've been waiting for something like this to finally happen. So I guess I'll just outright say it. In the desert of the Golden Coast, we can find a crashed meteor belonging to a member of the 7. Next to it is the pod they arrived in and a voice log left behind. It's from the Order.
Mission log. I was scanning the aftermath of the battle for Reality 783 when I picked up a distress signal sent by Agent Jones. It's been a while. He and I have a lot to catch up on. Whatever's going on, odds are the 0 point is involved. Initial scans show this place has an intense concentration of 0 point energies. I'll need more info to make a complete assessment.
The first member of the 7 to make a return to the storyline is the Order, arguably the most underdeveloped character of the team. And she's got a voice now, courtesy of Laura Bailey. Shockingly, her return reveals that throughout the past 3 years, the Order has actually been okay. She was never actually chromed. Technically, the only members we saw get chromed with our own eyes was the Scientist, the Origin, and the Visitor. That means it's very possible that the Foundation isn't chromed either. Anyway, we'll actually get back to him soon. Let's break down her audio logs. The first one, as you just heard, is a pretty general introduction to her return in the storyline. She picked up one of the distress signals Jones had sent out during 0 hour and likely was able to use it to track us to Reality 266. Cleverly, she assumes the 0 point is involved as usual. According to her initial research, the Golden Coast has intense concentrations of 0 point energy. Whether that's due to our shard or something else, we aren't sure. The Order needs more info before coming to a conclusion, so the mission log ends.
Mission log. Someone else is making a play for the shards, and I need to find out why. I could really use some help here. For the Seven, we aren't what we used to be. I miss my sister most of all. Okay, time to lock in on the mission. I'll scout the area and see what I'm up against.
On her second mission log, she discovers that someone else is making a play for the shards, likely referring to the Dark Voyager. The Order then gives us our first description of the Seven since Amy warned us about their fate back in Chapter 4, Season 1. According to her, the Seven aren't what they used to be, and she misses her sister most of all. To me, I find this way of describing them incredibly intriguing. Aren't what we used to be sounds more like they're washed up heroes who are retired, not deceased or sculpted anew, working for the last reality. Of course, I could be reading into this a little bit too much, but I just found that interesting. Especially since we were expecting the Order to be chromed, and lo and behold, she's not. This definitely opens up the doors for the Seven's fate in recent years being much different than we were initially expecting. But once again, let's get back on track. Those two audio logs are currently the only ones available in-game. The next two are for future updates, slightly revealing how her story may go in Season 1. It's also worth noting that by the time these next two logs go out, the Order will likely be an NPC on the island, according to leakers. Okay, on to number 3.
Mission log. This reality feels familiar in so many ways, yet something's not quite right. The loop seems stable, at least for now, but the storm has changed. Almost like someone's been tampering with it. Maybe it's because the 0 point's been fragmented. Who knows what kind of instability that might have introduced. I wish the scientists were here. That big brain of his would come in handy right about now. If only... Never mind. I've got work to do.
The Order starts off by expressing the same strange feelings Jones was experiencing. Something about the Golden Coast isn't quite right. The island also feels familiar to her in many ways. I'm sure this will be important soon. Her next dialogue mentions that the loop seems stable, which is actually a bit of a surprising thing to hear. Ever since the loop bubble exploded in Fracture, everyone has been wondering if the loop still existed or if it's simply just our gameplay now and there's no current explanation. Shamelessly, I've been on the side of there being no loop. It just didn't really make sense to me. But with the Order mentioning that the loop is still stable, that means that somehow there is a loop, and we've likely been in one for the past 3 chapters. A really good theory for how we've still been in loops since Fracture is that shards of the 0 point can generate their own loops around them, meaning everywhere a shard is, a loop encircles it. The Order then mentions that the storm has changed, almost as if someone was tampering with it. Once again, this isn't a future game update, but luckily for us, the weird shapes the storm will soon be making have already been leaked. The storm is definitely going to be getting messed up throughout the season, seemingly on purpose. The Order's theory for it being messed up is that it could be from the 0 point being fragmented, noting that we truly don't know what kind of instability that might have created. After getting all sciencey on us, it reminds her of someone. She wishes that the scientist was here, clearly drifting off into thought about whatever happened to him. She snaps herself back to reality and locks in. Finally, mission log number 4.
Mission log. This tech company's headquarters should contain all the necessary components to execute my plan. Have to be careful though. The place is crawling with thugs working for the Dark Voyager. Based on that ship of his, he's connected to the last reality. But something feels off. I think there's more going on than meets the eye. Stand by. I've got a lock on one of the pieces I need. Once I'm able to send the signal, then my old friend should... Wait, that looks like... a boarding mission. Jones, if you receive this message, I need you to...
She describes what I assume to be InnoLoop Labs, referring to a plan she has that's currently unknown to us. It seems like at the time of this mission log, InnoLoop is completely invaded by the Dark Voyager and his loyal henchmen. She connects the dots that based on the ship he's in, he's connected to the last reality. But once again, she gets the feeling something's wrong. There's much more going on here than what we're seeing. A bigger plan. She says to stand by so she can locate something she needs, explaining that once she's able to send a signal, then her old friends, likely referring to the Seven, should be able to do something. But she cuts herself off as she realizes what she's looking at in InnoLoop Labs. Frantically, she aborts her mission and addresses Jones in case he finds these mission logs. Right before she's able to give him any directions, something hits her, ending the mission log. These were an absolute roller coaster to listen to, but boy am I thankful the Seven are finally back in the storyline. Okay, let's get back to that final log though, because something big clearly just happened. As she's searching InnoLoop Labs for a piece she needs for her plan, which might be a mechanical part or an item similar, she comes across something that she recognizes. Whatever it is, it's scary enough for her to immediately abort her mission and try and send a message to Agent Jones. I've got two possible theories here. The first is that she spotted the Dark Voyager and saw the golden cube in his helmet for the very first time. When she described him, she only connected him to the last reality because of the ship he flies in, which means she very well could have been unaware as to what was controlling him. Seeing the golden cube in his helmet might have been a horrifying enough sight for her to attempt to flee, but not before Voyager spotted her. My second theory is that she somehow just laid eyes on one of her old friends turned evil, the Foundation. Right before Chapter 7 launched, a Kill Bill inspired hit list was posted by Fortnite, both to advertise the collab but to also hint at upcoming events in Season 1. The first one is the Imagined, crossed off because she's obviously dead in the storyline. This is a funny way of establishing that this is the bride's made-up hit list, but the following names were all referring to upcoming characters. The first one being the bus driver, who was shot out of the sky when Chapter 7 began. The names following it are all codenames for collabs that have arrived one by one, leading us to the final name on the bottom, the Foundation. Along with the Foundation's NPC being updated in the files, it seems extremely likely that the Foundation is going to be the second member of the Seven to return. Since this is the case, it's entirely possible she spotted him, but based on where she saw him and how it ended, it doesn't seem like he got as lucky with escaping the Chrome as she did. That's all of her audio logs broken down and my best explanations for what she says in all of them. But we have no time to waste. Something strange just happened over at InnoLoop Labs. Let's head back over. Since I took too long to get this video out, the first update of Season 1 actually dropped, and the storyline is already progressing. To our disbelief, the Dark Voyager's cradle now floats directly above InnoLoop Labs, now Lethal Labs, protected by a huge golden force field. It's aiming right down at the Zero Shard, which is now emitting much more energy than before, and spinning. The entire POI has been completely rebranded. All of the lights are golden instead of purple, the screens replace the InnoLoop logo with golden cubes, and even the blueprints for the panels surrounding the shard are Last Reality branded. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been fooled. InnoLoop Labs was very clearly a real tech company at some point, but it seems like at an unknown date, it was taken over behind the scenes and secretly controlled by the Dark Voyager to avoid suspicion. This explains why InnoLoop has so many redacted files on the 0 point, the 7, and realities. After all, most of the Dark Voyager's information is redacted as well, even the reality that he comes from. After having taken over this tech company, he used it to gain access to the Zero Shard from Hope and Jones, and now the curtain has been pulled. It was the Dark Voyager's plan all along, and the shard is in his possession. Now that he's got access to one, it's only a matter of time before things start ramping up. As we heard from the Order, the storm will soon be altered, almost like it's being tampered with. It seems pretty clear now that the Dark Voyager, using the power of the Zero Shard, will be the one altering the storm. For what reason, I remain unsure. With this video getting quite long, I'm sure you're wondering how there could possibly be any more lore. Well, I've been saving the best reveal for last. In fact, this isn't just a reveal, it's a colossal level plot twist that changes the way we think about the entire Fortnite storyline for the past 8 years, and how we look towards the future of where it's going. The Chapter 7 cinematic trailer starts off with an altered version of the recap we got at the end of 0 Hour, filled with tons of clips from the game's past, minus Jones's voiceover. Near the end though, as the camera begins to zoom out of a TV, something flashes up on the screen. It's so quick that you need to pause it to go back and read it. Once returning to this quick flash, this is what we see. Lines of code written by and intended for the last reality only. It reads, "Training run complete. Total elapsed time in base reality. 8 years, 9 weeks, 3 days, 9 hours, 30 minutes. Total simulated time across all iterations. 1.06 times 10 to the 11th power in years. Learning phase complete. Decommissioning error check protocol, the Dark Presence. Decommissioning anomaly containment protocol, and then it's a bunch of cube glyphs. Beginning phase 2. Executing program, and more cube glyphs." This is absolutely mind-blowing. It may seem confusing at first, but once you realize what exactly this all means, it makes you question everything we've ever known in the story. Let's break it down line by line. The first line talks about a training period being over, whatever that means. We'll need more context, so let's move on to the next one. The next line of code talks about the total amount of time spent in a reality referred to as base reality, which when counted backwards actually brings us to the launch day of Fortnite Battle Royale. This means means that whatever this entire screen is showing us, it is on such a huge scale that its lore stretches back to the first ever day of Battle Royale. The line after talks about simulated time across all iterations, which is another word for versions. This number comes out to exactly 106 billion years. That is a lot of time. The time spent within all versions of whatever the last reality is talking about totals up to an amount of time almost 8 times as old as the universe itself. But this next line is when things start to click for us. Learning phase complete. Chapter 7's launch marks the end of what this screen is referring to as a learning phase, one that likely started the day Battle Royale launched, since that's the totally elapsed time spent in the quote-unquote base reality. This screen looks like it's revealing to us that all of Fortnite so far has simply been a training and learning phase for the last reality, watching us, studying us, interacting with us, and now it's time for the real storyline to begin. After this line, we dive into some code that seems to be explaining the outcome of 0 Hour. An error check protocol named the Dark Presence is being decommissioned, which means put out of use, since it has served its purpose. The Anomaly Containment Protocol is being decommissioned as well, with its name being a bunch of cube glyphs. Putting these two protocols together, we can actually begin to piece together something crazy. Jones rifting in the red cube from OG was no mistake. The last reality knew this was going to happen. See, the Dark Presence wasn't actually meant to get the Zero Shard and grow as absurdly powerful as he did. That was an error in the last reality's plans, hence their system running an error check protocol named the Dark Presence. Once they realized this error, they initiated the Anomaly Containment Protocol, the red cube. This cube was designed to do exactly as it's described, contain the anomaly or error in their plans, aka the Dark Presence. After 8 years of what appears to have been a giant learning phase, the last reality had become experts at predicting our every move. They knew that the Dark Presence would be too powerful for us to defeat, and that Jones would eventually have the crazy idea to rift in the only thing he knows strong enough to fight back: a cube. So the last reality had the Dark Voyager use OG to orchestrate the creation of the cube, planting it in the Nexus in preparation for 0 Hour. When it came time, Jones called for a cube, and the red cube is the one that came through. It annihilated the Dark Presence and itself, marking the end of these two protocols being necessary, hence them being decommissioned. It's also worth noting that based on the Dark Voyager's red cube style, he likely was the one in charge of OG and the one that created the cube. I know I mentioned earlier in the video that I'd come back to the Dark Voyager and how he's back with the last reality. While they plan to make an entirely separate video diving deep into OG and how it connects to the grander scheme that the last reality is planning, here's a brief intro to what my theory is. I believe that the last reality has been secretly taking characters from across the years of our storyline and turning them into their own personal warriors. That's why we're seeing characters like Lynx working with the Dark Voyager in Battle Royale. Some of these characters have been being taken by the last reality this entire time, and Dark Voyager just happened to be one of them. With leaks about the Ice King returning in the storyline soon too, I think it's entirely possible that he's not coming on his own accord. He's actually being sent by the last reality, because he's been converted to the darkness as well. Alright, that's just a little taste of the theory. Hopefully I've got a much bigger video coming up on that soon. Back to the video. This is seriously insane to think about. The fact that they've been watching everything unfold and so easily manipulated the events of the story to have exactly what they want to happen. Moving on from these, our suspicions about the implications of there being a Phase 1 are confirmed. Phase 2 has just begun. Finally, one final line of code is shown. A program has just been executed, with the name indecipherable and replaced by cube glyphs. This could be regarding the Dark Voyager, but it's really impossible to know for now. Circling back to that line about total simulated time across all iterations, there's been many theories as to what that may mean. My personal theory is that this actually reveals that the last reality has restarted the universe dozens of times via big bangs, once things get too messy and they need to start over. This would allow them to have been around for over 100 billion years, while still only having spent the last 8 years in Battle Royale. So in total, they've been around for 100 billion years across all versions of the Omniverse they've lived through. Another theory is that this refers to the total time of all loops that have ever existed, which pairs up with the base reality being reality 0. This explanation would imply that the last reality has been studying us through the loops in reality 0, which is still a cool idea, but I think the Big Bang one is a lot more intense. At the end of the day, we really don't know the answer to this question just yet, but I'm sure it'll all be revealed in due time. With Phase 1 lasting about 8 years and including our entire story up until this very point, there's no telling as to how long this phase 2 could go on for. All we know now is that everything we thought we knew about the last 8 years of the storyline can now be basically thrown out the window. The last reality has always been in control, whether it was in the shadows watching, being hands-on with the island to learn how we'd react, or even training against us for the real attack that will likely take place later on in phase 2. The Cube Queen was never lying to us. She tried telling us years ago in her anthem, "You're just a player in my show, and everything you ever thought was true was just part of the play I made for you." We thought she meant metaphorically, but no, she was quite literally telling us the truth. Everything we've experienced was meticulously crafted so the last reality could learn and become more efficient against us in preparation for their full-blown attack to win over the 0 point permanently and grant the Nothing exactly what it's been working for, returning the Omniverse to eternal darkness. And if they're concluding phase 1, that means they've learned and trained enough that they're ready for what comes next. But are we? On that note, that's absolutely everything you need to know about our huge return back into the main Fortnite storyline. With the 7 returning slowly, the last reality being the main threat again, and possibly remnants of the imagined order buried deep below the desert sands, Chapter 7 is off to an incredible start. Let's just hope they keep the ball rolling as time goes on. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to make the 20+ hours of editing on this video worth it. And if you'd like to support me in the item shop, my code is TLL the Reaper. That also directly supports me tremendously. Special thanks to you for sticking until the end, so make sure to drop a comment on what your favorite thing is about the lore this season so I can read through and reply to all of them. Thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, keep it reaping.